Hi, welcome everyone, my dear friends. This test actually had little chance of happening because we're in Warsaw, at Gramowy, Warsaw. Szymon came here from Wrocław, I came here from Krakow, and actually we didn't have a plan B. That's because Szymon is leaving for the Netherlands in a few days, so it was worth making the effort. That's because today we have a witness to the change of an era, you could say. Because it's the last naturally aspirated Aufrecht Melcher Grossasbach in the C-Class, you're very welcome.
Hi, I'm Szymon. I came here with my gem, my car, my beloved one, a dream come true. We have a C-Class here. Its silhouette needs no introduction. It's a well-known car. I rarely drive this car since I only use it in Europe when visiting Poland. But I make the most of every moment of good weather, and even if the weather isn't perfect, I still try to drive this car. I've had this car since around October or November, I think 2024, so it's been a relatively short time, but I've already driven a good 7,000 kilometers with it. And the driving experience is fantastic. Right now, I'm not considering another car, so when my vacation ends, this one will just go in the garage under a cover for the winter. Before I got this vehicle, I previously had a Jaguar XF 3-liter supercharged with 380 horsepower, and then I switched to a Maserati Ghibli 3.0 SQ4 with 410 horsepower. And this vehicle, I can actually talk a bit about it because I bought it only because I saw it on Zacher OFF. Because Hilamoto appeared there, whom I warmly greet, and he was also presenting his Maserati there. I encourage you to watch that video because the guy really knows his stuff. I was missing a V8, and later I was also considering other cars like the Audi Rennsport 5 or the C-Class C63 Aufrecht Melcher Grossasbach, although I was also thinking about the M5 E60 with the V10 engine, beautiful sound. I almost bought that vehicle, but it got sold. And finally, my friend, whom I also want to warmly greet, Nikodem from Bystrica, from Mogilno exactly, said, "Man, go ahead and watch some videos about the maintenance and running costs. And above all, the sound which movies really don't capture." Here we have a powerful engine, a 6.2-liter V8, although the badge says 6.3, but maybe I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll explain why it looks like that. Under load above 3,000 to 4,000 revolutions per minute, it really gets phenomenal and loud here. And it just so happened that a man in Warsaw was selling it. He had it at a dealership. I think he had it for a good 2 or 3 years. When I was leaving, he had tears in his eyes. I won't lie, I saw sadness in his eyes. I'm not surprised at all. I'm still delighted with this car to this day, and every time I get in, I have a big smile on my face. So the only change I've made here when it comes to visual aspects of this car for now is the wheels. Since the previous ones were 255 wide, I managed to fit 275s here, which with this power gives me better traction and lets me make better use of the car's potential. When you lift the hood, you see a beautiful 6.2-liter engine. As I mentioned before about the badge, which says one man, one engine, it means that one person in Germany assembles the engine from start to finish. Each engine has a name and surname signed on it. Why do we have the 6.3 Aufrecht Melcher Grossasbach designation? It's actually a tribute. In the 1960s and 1970s, the M100 engine had exactly 6.3 liters, and it was created in those years. And then later on, every subsequent Aufrecht Melcher Grossasbach version was marked as a tribute to that 6.3 Aufrecht Melcher Grossasbach engine, even though there were also other engine displacements. For me, it looks like this. In stock, this engine in this version has 451 horsepower, but in my case, the power was increased. And it was done with a relatively simple procedure, because considering that this engine was installed everywhere back then in the S-Class, E-Class, and so on. And those engines had 525 horsepower in stock, while mine currently has 520. How did I achieve that? Mercedes came up with this in a very simple way, you could even say ridiculously simple. The air throttle doesn't open fully to 100%. It opens up to a maximum of 60%. All you need to do is unlock it so it opens more, and then the engine gets more air, which makes it generate more horsepower. This is actually the pre-facelift version, so it has those issues that were fixed in the facelifted versions, like the head bolts here in this pre-facelift version. It's worth keeping an eye on them because they were made from relatively soft, tender metal. They can even get affected by things like temperature, mileage, and so on. You can pull it out by 3 coils, which causes the engine to have blow-by. Theoretically, blow-by isn't particularly dangerous for the engine, but if it lasts a long time, then it becomes dangerous. Considering that a head bolt like that can literally snap off and break, it's something worth paying attention to. Another thing, the intake manifold was also an issue. From what I was able to read and dig up, some kind of mixture of 3 different metals can also corrode, which isn't visible at first glance. That's why it's best to just remove it, take a look from the other side to see what it looks like and possibly repair it, try to fix it, or simply get a new one.
Everyone says that Poles love SUVs, but there has to be an asterisk here and a fine print. Yes, but that's about private choices. That's when the Kia Sportage, Yaris Cross or CHR reign supreme. However, 69% of registrations in Poland are for companies, and the king of fleets is the Toyota Corolla, which is also the most common taxi in Poland. Almost 17,000 units. This isn't a theory, these are statistics from the AutoDNA report summarizing the year 2025 in the new car market. That's also where I found out that the car with the highest damage rate in their used car database this time is the BMW 5 Series. Do you know how many of these cars have a recorded damage in the AutoDNA database? Every third one, every second one, over 3/4. The link to AutoDNA is in the description. Check it out not only for interesting facts, but especially for reliable used car info before buying. Check the car's vehicle identification number in AutoDNA before buying and avoid accident-damaged cars or those with tampered odometers. The link is in the description. You're welcome.
Another thing is that the variable Nockenwellensteuerung can also make a sound similar to the timing chain, even though it's not the timing chain, it's the variable Nockenwellensteuerung. They're located both on the left and on the right. There we have small metal discs and little rollers, and those metal discs are also made from a soft metal alloy. And those rollers simply aren't held in place, they just turn and wear out in one spot, literally carving a little hole, those rollers. So anyone might get scared that, for example, it's the timing system making noise, but actually you just need to fix the variable Nockenwellensteuerung and everything will be okay. Another problem that can occur, especially in the pre-facelift version, is with the camshafts. They can simply wear out, which is also very bad for this engine. So it's worth checking and inspecting those camshafts regularly. When it comes to operating costs, just considering the fuel consumption of this car, it can even reach around 40 liters in the city or even more. With aggressive driving on the highway, you can get it down to about 13 or 15 liters, but you really have to try hard to achieve that. I can't do that when driving on vacation. I think in mixed driving it's around 17 to 20 liters, and with calm city driving at 22 or more, you can do 7,000 kilometers. Good oil, we don't overheat it, we keep it under control. Previously, I had oil with a 5W-40 specification here, and with aggressive city driving, the temperature would quickly reach 120 degrees, so I decided to change the oil right away. 5W-50, liqui moly, is a relatively expensive oil, but it's worth it because the engine will really thank us, just like our wallet in the future. As for the failures I've experienced so far, well, 2 days after buying it, just an interesting fact, the ignition coil broke. Luckily, it wasn't a big issue, so I see it as more of a consumable part. Next, when it comes to parts like this, for example, this plastic, the nice cover with the Mercedes logo, it wasn't there. Just an interesting fact after the purchase. I actually managed to buy a new one, the last piece on the internet. I found it somewhere, dug it up for 800 zlotys, but it is pleasing to the eye after all.
Even the shade is different.
Exactly, it's a different color due to the temperature here. I still need to replace the control arm in this engine, which I already knew about when buying the car. And here's an interesting fact, because the stock C-Class basically has the same suspension as the C63 Aufrechtmelcher Grossasbach, but the difference is that here we have widened fenders. Compared to the standard version, this control arm is longer. Unfortunately, there are no aftermarket options for replacement, so we need to get it from the authorized service center, costing about 2,000 to 2,500 zlotys. Given its power, performance, sound and looks, this car isn't very expensive, especially since it's just the standard C63 Aufrechtmelcher Grossasbach, not the P31 package. Where we have those bigger discs, bigger brake calipers, here we have relatively small ones, so these parts aren't that expensive. They're not scary or expensive, so you can confidently buy and enjoy driving. At the moment, the car has a mileage of 160, just under 2,000 kilometers. The C-Class, as it is a C-Class, the interior is pre-facelift. Probably a lot of people know what it looks like. Plasticky, hard, but it's the C63 Aufrechtmelcher Grossasbach version. The bucket seats do a great job. They're inflatable, so you can adjust them to your liking, and they hold you perfectly in the corners. The gauge cluster constantly reminds us while driving with a beautiful 63 V8 inscription, so you never forget what you're really driving here. The flat-bottom steering wheel handles well and offers great grip. The Harman Kardon sound system also does a great job, although personally I don't even use it. I keep the sound system off and listen to what's happening in the back because it's really worth it. But this is already a Mercedes from a certain era, which unfortunately, in my opinion, will never come back, because in my view, these were the last really good years. Aufrecht Melcher Gross Asbach, you could say, had the guts to put such a powerful engine into such a small car. So, wow, as far as I'm concerned. Big applause to them. So this Mercedes was designed from scratch all the way through by Aufrecht Melcher Gross Asbach. No screens, just buttons, unless we want to add one here if we want. We have, I would even say, an old-fashioned screen here, fully electric seats, memory. I won't hide it, the interior partly put me off. The look, the plastic feel, the hardness. But as soon as I got into this car, I felt how these bucket seats really hug and wrap around your torso. So I knew this was exactly what I was looking for.
Time for the 2-meter guy test. And I'll start it off by saying, wow, what seats! These are as bucket-like as seats can possibly get. Basically, they seem to wrap around not just your back, but even your stomach. They stick out here, look, by how much? And this is really a bucket seat you can use every day, because these aren't hard, uncomfortable, sporty bucket seats, but soft, everyday seats that hold you well. I can position myself relative to the steering wheel without much trouble. I would say I wish the steering wheel was a bit closer. It's already extended as far as it goes, and I can't get any closer either because of the way the console is designed. The plastic here is already sticking out. I've already hit it with my knees, so it won't improve, but it's not bad. You could say the headroom passes the 2-meter tall person test. I have absolutely no extra space. We have a roof window here, which probably takes away a few centimeters as well when it comes to the atmosphere inside. I'd like to add here that this is not only a witness to the last era of motoring, when there were still big, naturally aspirated engines under the hood, but also to the times when there were only knobs, only buttons, and almost entirely analog gauges. On the center gauge, we already have the first screen, and here the second screen is hidden. Okay, but that's only visible on demand, so you could say that this feeling is fully analog and naturally aspirated. What's he doing in this car here? Close up, because we're recording right now. Well, we did it. And when it comes to materials, I'd say it's rather worse than better, because the finish is very uniform. It looks exactly the same here in the upper part, where this concrete slightly bends under your finger, and it looks exactly the same a bit lower, where it's already completely hard. And these hard plastics are everywhere here. The top, the doors are also barely soft. The most comfortable parts are, of course, the armrest, which on the right side I wouldn't say is world class. Only on the left side it's a bit more comfortable, but still nothing special. So, in this respect, considering the price of this car and the engine we have here, the interior definitely falls behind. Nothing special. As you can see, I have to sit astride. Theoretically, this shell behind the seat has these recesses where I could theoretically put my knees, but they're probably not for my knees, so I have to sit like this here, as you can see. There isn't much space left above my head either. I have to bend down, and I can't really imagine 3 people sitting on this back seat. This 2-meter tall guy in the back definitely failed the trunk test.
As for the trunk, I think with a car like this, it's a secondary thing. There's 475 liters of free space here. We also have the batteries in the back because of the size of the engine, and you know how that is. A spare tire. Another interesting thing is that on the tips of the exhaust system, we also have the Aufrecht Melcher Gross Asbach inscription, which changes under the influence of temperature. Once it heats up, it appears, and that's when you can really notice that it's there.
Subtitles by Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland. So let's start the test drive. A journey through time, you could say. So where can you set it? How many Fahrenheit can you set here? Wytwórnia Poland.
We'll cool it down a bit in a moment, once it cools down a little.
All right. And since we're already talking about Fahrenheit, then Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland. Wytwórnia Poland?
Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia. The previous owner actually imported it on his own. Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland. Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland, Wytwórnia Poland. Or you can get one damaged from America, you could say, for about 105,000. You can start looking around.
I'll tell you, From the outside, when you were revving it, it sounded a bit meaner.
Inside,
the sound is just enough so you can hear what you're driving, but not in a way that bothers you on a long trip, because you can drive it
in the gearbox.
When connecting, you can see that you have to follow the right path for old models, and this one is also an old model when it comes to reaction time, because here, when I step on it, we get along with it very well too, because look, it keeps the revs up for a few seconds, waiting for further commands. At high revs, we see around 4,000, and only then did it drop to just over 1,000 revolutions per minute.
Here we have a 7-speed 7G Tronic gearbox. In my opinion, a very pleasant gearbox. It's not problematic, it works nicely in my opinion, and it goes well with this engine in normal mode. This vehicle will start off in second gear, but when we switch to sport mode, the gearbox allows the engine to rev a bit higher. It's more aggressive then, and we start off in first gear instead of second.
At city speeds, braking doesn't make everyone lurch forward. It's actually a very smooth braking. It's easy to feel the moment when it starts and when it ends, so that everyday driving isn't nervous or unpleasant. Why did you actually change to wider tires? Because the original factory ones were miscalculated.
Too narrow, especially since I increased the power a bit and we only have rear-wheel drive here. Well, I wanted to use its potential, and now sometimes it loses traction, it slips. But when we turn on the traction control, the sport mode, it lets the car slide a bit, but it won't let us go off the road, it keeps us in the lane. That makes the feeling of acceleration better because there's no choking or blocking of the engine.
Here there's a slight excess of power because it's hard to imagine better conditions for the tires to transfer the torque than just driving straight on warm, even asphalt, and still it breaks traction a little.
Actually, when I was increasing its power, I also programmed it to make pops above 4,000 revolutions per minute. So if we have the option, we can also turn on this manual mode with the paddles. We can allow ourselves to turn it on. Now we have paddles or manual. We can use the lever as well as the paddles. Surprisingly, the lever also doesn't move forward and backward, but left and right, which I also had to get used to, because in previous cars, when I had paddles or a more sporty car, it was always forward and backward, but here it's left and right, so it's a bit different.
And what do you do in the Netherlands?
And in the Netherlands? Well, actually my wife and I both work and live there. It's already been 7 years since we've been there. At the moment we work for a company that deals with packing onions and garlic. Don't worry, we don't peel them, we just pack the ready products. So I'm a machine operator, so it's not really any special job. I just have to set up the whole machine and make sure it's working properly and that it runs for the whole shift. And that's it, that's the whole philosophy. It's not a hard job. The beginnings in the Netherlands were much harder, so I can't complain about how things are now.
All right, I can confirm in the meantime that those pops from the exhaust above 4 when you let off the gas, they really go off. They're pretty frequent. Well, right now actually. We have it. Luckily it's not happening uncontrollably, only when you want it to. This is actually a stretch of road that's not very even. I have to say it handles these kinds of bumps very comfortably, considering it's a highly sporty car. Now the light will turn green. Yes. He definitely wanted to do everything the way I wanted. I mean, the steering system didn't resist, it snapped back very sharply. Yes, it returned with, well, I'd say even with ease, and it didn't even tilt, but somehow I didn't feel confident. At the same time, there was a moment of some chaos in all of this. I won't repeat it again. There was also no effect, I think, in the back, on the wheels. I was afraid we would have some rubbing on the wheel arches.
But not taking into account the direction it's heading, this, so to speak, whole automotive industry, all this eco stuff, these downsized engines, more and more hybrids, electric cars, we still have, so to speak, a moment that we can really catch. Real cars with heart, with soul. Where did the automotive world still truly live in those times? where, for example, Hans got up one day and said, we're putting a 6.2 liter engine into a bicycle and the rest is fine. Did you take that approach? When BMW put a V10 into the E60, where the engine is actually based on Formula One design, and we have that beautiful sound with the sequential manual gearbox that really kicks us in the back. And possibly if someone doesn't like the interior but would like to buy such a car, don't hesitate. If you have the chance or the opportunity to take a ride or hear it live, maybe you should go for it. The facelifted version, where the interior already looks more modern, is supposed to have a completely different cockpit inside. But personally, I think this car is easy to like, easy to love. You just need to take it for a drive. And believe me, after that, those plastics just stop mattering to me.
Yes, it's true that when you're driving this car, you basically focus on the driving itself, on that analog feeling, on the resistance in the steering wheel. It's also natural, analog and real. And also the sound that comes from the back, which surprisingly, even though it's much louder outside than the factory version, inside it's absolutely livable. Yes, Simon, so thank you for coming here and presenting this car.
Thank you as well.
Something successful, so to speak, wintering and enjoying this car again after you return to Poland. Thank you, dear viewers, for watching this episode. Remember to subscribe and see you in the next one. Bye.